I'm sure I'm going to run out of time at the end of this, and then I'm going to be sort of rushing off to catch a plane and won't get to say goodbye to all of you, but I can't wait to stay in touch with so many of you, and you have been truly so inspiring and thoughtful, and the questions you've asked have helped me think more about what we need to be talking about. And I suppose it's probably funny to have people come from so far away to talk to you about the work you already know so well, and I appreciate so much how welcoming you've all been. It's been really wonderful to be here, so I am really glad that I flew around the world to see you all, and thank you so much. We get to end on a high note. This is like my favorite presentation ever, because I think social media is so cool. Do you remember the days when we would, I don't know if you did this, but we would take out ads in the paper for shelter pets? And you would have 4 pets across the top, and that's all you could talk about. And you'd say, like, come to the shelter and adopt. That was all we had. And then social media, Facebook hit. Does anybody know what year Facebook came to be? 2009. Any other guesses? It was 2004. And I know. And it changed everything because all of a sudden, we had free advertising, and I actually think that as much as I hate Facebook and it causes me terrible anxiety, it is why we have transparency in animal welfare now, because all of a sudden we could tell the stories of all of our shelter pets. And so please follow Pima Animal Care Center on social media, and we tell all of the stories on social. So I'm going to talk about that today, and I think this is about community engagement, but specifically it's about engaging people digitally. Oh, well, that's sad. Okay, so that dog is not a dog that I know, but it was the closest to a dog that I loved very much. In 1999, when I was working in sheltering, we killed virtually every animal that came into the shelter. There were no outcome options and no one knew, and we did it all in silence. And I saved this dog named Charlie from a home where he had been abandoned by his owner who had been evicted. And Charlie came into the shelter. He was the best dog in the world. He had like some kind of nasty teeth because he had been neglected his whole life. And so I had been working in the shelter for 6 months, and I asked the staff, if Charlie becomes at risk of euthanasia, someone please tell me. I'm going to take him home. I want him. And I loved him so much. He's the kind of dog, like, I just had a, like, crush on him. I would go home and, like, dream about his fluffy, cute head. And I felt like by telling them that I wanted to take him if he was at risk, they would have listened. But unfortunately, on my day off, I happened to be coming into the shelter, and I walked into the euthanasia room for some reason, and they were in the process of euthanizing him. And in that moment, I could have stopped them. Like, they hadn't done it yet. I could have stopped them. But I was so kind of traumatized by the way that sheltering worked that I didn't. I walked backwards out of the room. I ran out of the shelter, and I never went back. It was my last day at that job. I swore off animal welfare forever, but I remember those days because some of us are still living in them. These are the shelters where most of the animals died, and in some cases they're still dying, where volunteers and staff are silenced and they're not allowed to tell stories. Some of you may be working in shelters now where you're not allowed to tell the stories of the things that happen in the back. And most people didn't know. Our communities had no idea. No one knew what I was going through in 1999 in my shelter. Those were the dark days of sheltering. And when I asked the room, how many of you have been doing this more than 10 years, and many of you raised your hand, you know those days. You remember those days. But things have changed. So we have social media today. which has been a huge change. We have adoption and outreach events. Pets can be seen all over the shelter. In our shelter, any animal who's there can be seen unless there's a good reason for it not to be. We're out in the communities. We're shouting about shelter pets. We're talking about our successes. And we have huge volunteer and foster programs. So it's not just us telling the story, it's all of our volunteers and fosters. Things are so much different than they were when I lost that dog. That would never happen in our shelter today. Okay, so, oh gosh, this dog. Okay, this was one of my favorite things that happened this year. So this, you won't be able to read this slide, but this dog was surrendered to our shelter, okay? And it ends up getting adopted, but here's the really cool thing. We have a Facebook page that's called like Pack Adoptions. And so the person who adopted this dog posts on the page about how much they love their new adopted dog. Really cute, right? Then this thing happens that we did not expect. The person who surrendered the dog then posts the story about how they had to surrender their dog because they had a life crisis, and that seeing the dog get readopted was life-changing for them. It was so healing, and they thanked the new adopter. And so in this moment, it was this really cool full circle of like, social media and the way that we're talking about pets isn't just about adoptions anymore. It's about building relationships between people who love animals and maintaining that human-animal bond. So, okay, these are the rules. We have to trust our communities. We have to believe that they have good intentions. We have to let them help. And we have to think of people as our partners in this work. That person who surrendered that dog a few years ago, that person would have been demonized. If they had posted on social media, 1 million people would have gone after them and said mean things. But we're changing things today because of the way we're doing business. When you're thinking about community engagement, here's some of the things that should be your goals. And these are going to sound nuts to you. You want to appear on print or news media every single day. It is not hard to do. Post on social media a minimum of 6 times per day. For some reason, when we hear people talking about social media, they have all these rules about like, oh, you should only post once a day because you'll ruin your engagement. That is not true. Post a lot on social media, like as much as you want. If you have a good story, tell it. Ask for help every single day. You should be asking people to foster, volunteer, donate, share, and then thank them. You should have 1,000 volunteers and 1,000 foster caregivers. If you're a tiny rescue, that might sound like a lofty goal, but people want to help you. Let them. And you should set the goal of holding at least one event every single week. So we have, on any given day, we have a special. So one of our specials, I forget what was it. Oh, yeah. We have monsoons come. Like, it's so dry and horrible, and then the rain comes. So we just did, like, Monsoon Madness adoption special. We find any reason to do an event. We did a St. Patrick's adoption event, but that didn't seem fun enough, so we did a St. Patrick's pajama party adoption event. We will use any excuse for a fun event. So we're going to talk specifically about social media now. I forget that dog's name. That was the most annoying dog I've ever had in a shelter. She was the dog that sits in the kennel and ruins it for everybody else. You know, the dog that's like howling and screaming. And I was like, this is back in, I think, 2013. I was like, I think we're going to have to euthanize this dog because she's annoying. And we, of course, couldn't do that, but we really didn't know what to do. She was driving me crazy. I couldn't get any work done. And so we took this photo series of her just being like totally obnoxious. She was so stressed out in the shelter. I mean, she was only crying because she had lived with a family for 9 years, and the family couldn't keep her anymore. So we posted this on social media, and her old family saw it, and they said, when you find an adopter, connect that person to us because we'll tell them how to get her to stop doing that. And we did. We got her adopted, but it was like only because of social media that this dog is alive. Social media is fast, it's free, it's the easiest tool we have to save lives. Anyone can do social media, and all you have to do is tell the story. This is Bianca. Bianca was lived her life on a chain. An animal came up and attacked her. The owner tried to hit the animal over the head with a shovel, accidentally hit Bianca in the head, fractured her skull. That first picture is her. He dumped her off at the pound in who knows where. Somebody posted this picture on social media, and this is in the middle of nowhere in the woods somewhere. But somebody posted this, and I saw it, and I was like, hey, is she going to live? And they were like, well, only if we get her medical care. And so they were like, we're trying to raise donations for that. So they raised the donations, and then we were like, can you bring her to us? So they did. They got her the medical care she needed. Her whole life on a chain. No love, nothing. They get her to us, and we tell her story, and all we did was put up that one picture of her, and she got adopted by a millionaire. This woman who adopted old dogs who had had really hard lives, and she lived like a millionaire lifestyle her last 2 years. She ended up getting some kind of cancer, went through like better treatment than most humans get, lived a while longer, and then eventually passed away. But Bianca had the best life ever, and it was just because we stuck her up on social media and told people she needed help. You don't need extraordinary stories, though. You don't need to have a Bianca. Just tell the regular old things that happen in your shelter. Think about it this way. If you were at a zoo and you had the opportunity to go behind the scenes and see the giraffes and the elephants, just like the staff at the zoo do, you would take it. And so we can do the same thing in animal shelters. We can show people what behind the scenes look like. These are 2 pictures. That's a mama dog who had way too many puppies. And we just caught her while she was hanging out with a volunteer, and it was such a sweet, poignant picture. It got her adopted. That cat was, well, huge. And just by posting his picture, that cat could have sat in our shelter for months, right? He's like a big old 8-year-old tomcat. We stuck that picture up, and in an hour he was gone. It's kind of developing an eye as you're walking through your shelter. You're bored by kittens. Guess what? The public isn't. You're bored by your average plain old dog that's had too many babies. The public isn't. They're still really interested in things that don't even seem that exciting to you. Oh, gosh. Wow. Okay. I told you this story. That's Cowgirl. That is actually the I think it was BuzzFeed. Bark Post. That's the story, why you should volunteer at an animal shelter, in 2 photos. So that's Bianca 5 minutes before she met the volunteer that changed her life and 5 minutes after. And just by posting those 2 pictures, that's all we did, get picked up by the national media and got millions and millions of views, and of course got her adopted. Really simple. This is way easier than we make it. When people feel, they act. This cat just, she was so sad. She'd been hit by a car. She'd had this leg amputation. I found her in the kennel this way. This is a picture that I took walking through. I do a walkthrough of my shelter every day. Took her picture, stuck it up on the internet, and I was like, oh, this is really sad and hard to look at, and I feel really bad for her. She's clearly in pain. She's recovering from the surgery. I couldn't believe it. I'm in Texas, which is like on the other side of the country from Virginia, where I used to live. One of my old volunteers from Virginia calls me, and she was like, can you send her to me? And I was like, oh, come on. You can get a cat in your own area. And she's like, no, I want to save this cat. I want to help this cat. And so she paid the adoption fee, got her adopted right that day, and then we kept her until she was stabilized. And then we were able to transport her all the way across the country to her new home. And here she is at home. She owns a dog now. And she is the favorite lap cat. And this is another one. She blows up my inbox about every 3 months, sending me pictures of Scout, her very, very beloved cat. And that cat could have been another nameless statistic if she hadn't gone on social media. Just another cat. But instead, she's Scout, the world's most beloved cat. Say thank you every day. People are coming to you to help, And they're excited about it, so thank them. Thank them for what they're doing to you. There's an organization in Kansas City called KC Pet Project, and they're awesome at this. They're constantly thanking the community, and they're just telling them about what they're accomplishing, and they're always saying, we saved 12,000 lives, and it's all because of you. And because of that, they have built one of the most life-saving organizations in the country with nothing. Their operating budget for as many animals is about half of what mine is, but they've done it because they are always thanking and engaging the community. They're another organization that's great to follow on social media because they do a really good job. Them and Lifeline in Atlanta. Those are two other good ones, KC Pet Project and Lifeline. Be specific about how people can help you, but keep it fun and creative. This dog, let me see, what was his name? Oh, gosh. Oh, yeah, Coda. So Coda was with us for 8 months, and I could not figure out why, because he was such a good dog. And he was sitting in this kennel in Austin. We had a lot of dogs waiting in Austin, and a lot of just sort of brindle, average-looking dogs. And I'm doing my walkthrough, and I hear a passerby, and they were like, that dog is so plain looking. And I saw his little face, and he looked so sad, like he understood what the person was saying. So I just stuck it up on Facebook. I said, someone was walking by Coda, and they said he was plain looking, and that made him feel really sad. Can you show him some love? Well, I don't know. The views on this post, let me see. 497,869 people saw that post. The whole internet blew up. People were like so mad at whoever said that. And they also like told him all these wonderful things about himself, which we happily had a volunteer read to him. But of course, this lady shows up like a day later and is like, where is he? And we were like, Coda, and she's like, nobody's ever calling him plain again. So she adopted him, and I kid you not, he has his own Instagram or Facebook, I can't remember, and it's called Prince Coda, where she just posts like Vogue model pictures of him all the time and talks about how gorgeous he is, and this is years later. So we do this thing a lot where we ask for help, but we're not fun and creative about it, and people want to engage us. We didn't ask for a doctor in that post, right? We just asked for somebody to tell Coda that he wasn't plain looking. And by doing that, you get people's attention. There is no pet that is too ugly to market. That includes the broken ones, the hairless Octavias out there. We actually marketed Octavia on her ugliness with this little meme, yes, Octavia, there's a family out there for you too. She had mats and had to be shaved down and just looked ridiculous. The kitten on the other side of the screen is a ringworm kitten who's just been dipped. We put he like fell asleep because he was so exhausted from the stress of ringworm dip. So we just stuck his picture on the internet. And of course, we have our ringworm kittens on public view, so he was adopted later that day. Like, people want to come take that kitten home, wrap him up in a blanket, and cuddle him forever and ever. This dog came to us. We still don't know what happened. It seems that somebody had cut up her neck. And so she had these, you can't really see it, but all over her body she had these long wounds that had to get stapled up. She was one of the saddest puppies. I mean, it was awful to see. It was like one of those horrible things that we have to see sometimes, but rarely. So we didn't know what to do because we were like really debated, like, do we put that on the internet? Is everybody gonna like start sobbing? But we did. We put it on the internet, and we put it on Facebook. We explained what had happened, and then this happened. So her name, I think we ended up naming her Corazon, which means heart and she or love or something. And she ended up getting national press. She found a foster home, and her story went viral. People all over the country, all over the world heard her story, and she got a great home, and she has a little heart on her nose, and it's just the cutest thing. But it was one of those situations where we were actually afraid to market her, and we're so glad that we did because we got her story out there. Oh, that's the ringworm treatment ward at Austin Animal Center, and that is in a public area of the shelter. We don't hide our ringworm cats in the back. They stay up front, available for foster or adoption. So, and we just explain to people what ringworm is. We're like, it's athlete's foot. It's not a super big deal. Here's what the treatment entails. You can adopt or foster this. These guys, the second we run out of kittens, all the ringworm kittens get adopted. Like, people don't really care. Unless the kittens are like exceptionally cute, if they have a choice between non-ringworm and ringworm, they'll generally adopt the non-ringworm first. But truly, the second those non-ringworm are off the adoption floor, they're going to go for the ringworm. They don't really care. So we tried to do this photo shoot. We called it Cats and Tats. And we were like, we're going to get some really hot people, and we're going to get them to pose with their animals, and that's going to get our animals adopted. So we were super excited about this. We found these like images someone else had done like this. We were like, we're going to make a calendar. It's going to be great. But the problem is that we didn't actually know any models. So we were like, okay, we'll get our some of the employees' spouses to do it and some of the shelter workers to do it, because we'll look good on camera too. So that's what came out of that. That is actually one of the better images from this photo shoot. It was a complete disaster. And then we had to explain it to them why we weren't featuring them on a calendar. You are going to mess up. And people are really scared, I think, because of social media. They're scared about messing up and getting it wrong. This is the era of, quote, fake news. This is the area when anybody says anything they want and somehow get away with it. Don't stress so much about your social media. If you get a post wrong and the response isn't great, post 5 more things and no one's going to even see it. It's not end of the world stuff. We need to chill out. So many shelters are so busy making their social media perfect that they're not posting the animals that need them the most. For those of you that have heard Blackie's story, I apologize. But it is to date my favorite thing social media has ever done. That's Blackie the day that he came into our shelter. He couldn't move, he was lateral, thought he was dying. We had a mean vet, and the mean vet was like, I'm going to euthanize him now, he's suffering. Then we had a really nice volunteer who was like, I don't think that he's reached the end of his life. I want to take him home so he can die in a home, because Blackie had been a chain dog his whole life. Never been in a home before, never known love. And so the vet and the volunteer fought about it, and the volunteer won because they asked me. So Blackie goes home, and we thought he probably had a couple of days. We gave him comfort care, which is all we do for pets at the end of their lives. We thought he had a couple of days. But Blackie surprised us all. That is him celebrating his first and only Christmas in a home, and then his first New Year's in a home, and he came back to life. And I wouldn't have believed it unless I saw it. But Blackie had the best last 3 months of any dog's life as a hospice dog for Bruni, who's the best foster ever, pictured here. His story went viral. All in all, we think it was seen by, the views on it were 170 million. Ashton Kutcher shared his story, and that got 25 million on its own. But he taught the whole world about hospice. Most people hadn't heard of hospice before Blackie's story, and because his story went viral, we were able to explain that hospice is just end-of-life fostering for shelter pets. And that is a picture of him taken on the last day of his life. I still can't look at it because I cry. But he got to know love and a home and a family before he died, and that really is what social media can do. And one of the other lessons I've learned is that a lot of you are already doing this stuff. but you're not telling enough of the story. You're not telling the hard stories. You're not telling like all the heart work that you're doing. Start telling these stories. The world wants to hear them, and they'll respect you for all that you're doing for pets. Okay, so there's Blackie. That's another one of his stories in his Christmas hat. We also got in the end, I made this slide a couple years ago. We got hundreds of thousands of dollars of donations from this. Okay, so here's some creative other ways to engage. That is the cover of our annual report. That little girl's really cute, right? She was one of the kids who came to our homeless outreach event. And that was a puppy her family got her for the holiday because they knew she didn't have a home and they wanted her to have something that would be hers and that she could hold on to. And so they brought that puppy to our outreach event and got it vaccinated, and we got it spayed and neutered for them and all fixed up. And then that is a flyer we have telling people to go adopt from local shelters. This is a great thing to do in any community. Our shelters all work together, even though we don't always get along. If someone leaves our shelter without getting a pet, we send them right on to another shelter. We assume every pet is adoptable. We need to get rid of this word unadoptable. You may choose not to adopt out certain pets, but the idea that some pets are inherently unadoptable needs to go. So we just assume that every pet is adoptable, and then we figure out how to make that work. This cat, obviously really scared in the shelter, and so one of the staff made him a little box. And he laid inside the cardboard box, and he's not able to speak for himself. But the message on the box says, "I'm shy but really sweet," and that helped to get him a home. Really simple stuff. These are our kennel cards. I think one of the next talks I want to do is just on kennel cards because we're getting it so wrong. Kennel cards are the cards hanging on the front of the kennel doors when people walk in. We need to get so much more creative with the way we're decorating our kennels. These are our cards now. We actually did a bunch of, those are little icons, and those tell us what we know about the animal. So we have these for cats and dogs. And so the icons tell you something about the pet. They may say, has lived with other cats, or likes to play outdoors, or whatever it is. And then we also tell you if the pet has been in foster care, and so you can ask about what the experience was like in a foster home. And we try to get a really cute picture in the kennel, too. Adoption events, like I said, there's always an excuse for an adoption event. Some weeks, I kid you not, we'll have 4 separate adoption events. We're just like on it. Like if we got too many cats, we had 300 cats the other day in the shelter, and 300 adult cats. And our cat coordinator was like, we've got to do an event. And the next day we just did an event. We just did a fee waived on adult cats adoption event. But these are a couple examples. We did a pack hidden gems event where our longest stay dogs and cats got gems on their kennels. And then the volunteers wrote in things about the pets. And so people could actually get pointed out to them the pets that needed them the most. Anyone can volunteer. This no kids volunteering thing, I don't get it. Kids, pets, there's nothing cuter. We have young people come and read to our cats. Reading to the dogs stresses me out way too much. And I don't even know if the dogs like it. They just want to be like cuddled and petted by the kids. So I don't love those. We do it with cats though. We have young people come and read. We also have kids come and do enrichment. They make enrichment toys for cats and dogs and give them to them, and it's really fun. We also do fostering for almost every pet. So unless it's a very highly adoptable pet, it's available for foster or adoption. We get pets to foster as quickly as possible, as soon as we can get them stabilized enough to leave the shelter. This is a little dog that had mange, and he went to foster, and this is what he looked like 3 weeks later. A lot of shelters, for whatever reason, would have kept him in the shelter to treat him. Don't keep them in the shelter. If you have a way to get them out, get them out. They are better off in someone's home. We ask for money a lot. I'm horrible at asking for money. It's why I work for a government shelter. but we do it anyway because we're doing it on behalf of the pets. We ask for money in all kinds of creative ways. We just became the first government shelter that I know of to raise $5 million in our recent campaign, and the campaign was called Your Love Saves Lives. And it was a campaign just geared around giving donations so that we can build life-saving programs. We have about 15 staff members who are all grant funded, and without donations, we can't keep their positions. Worst picture ever, right? I was like, who is this guy, and why is he kissing one of our dogs? I think the news took this picture, but yeah, it's really not the best example. Okay. Start to create change in your community. These two dogs were too bonded. They actually met at the shelter, and they met in playgroup. And so in playgroup, we let dogs pick their roommates. So, like, you go out to playgroup, you hang out with 20 dogs, you're like, he's a jerk, she's pretty cool, but I really love this guy over here. And so you pick your roommate, and then we co-house the dogs to, you know, make them not lose their minds while they're at our shelter. And so these two dogs got co-housed, and this is how they laid all day. They were, like, just in love. So one of our colleagues was walking through the shelter, took this picture, we put it on social media, and it went crazy. This was very recently. And so that picture ended up being a story in a national paper. It was like NBC or CBS. Somebody big picked it up about shelter dogs comforting each other while they wait for a home. And of course, we never thought we could get two medium and large dogs like that adopted together, but we did it, and they are now in a forever home together. You guys have probably never seen anything like this before, huh? I think this is one of our fosters that has like 3 litters with her. So when we talk about cats, it's really easy to lump them into groups as if they aren't individuals. And the way we talk about cats needs to more closely reflect the way we talked about dogs, in that each one is an individual. And so even though we all get really tired of seeing giant litters of kittens and so many cats, we don't know what to do. We have to start talking about every one of those cats as if they're an individual, as if they're like an individual with an individual set of needs and desires and their own personalities. Every one of these kittens is going to be a different being. They're not just kittens. They're all like, there's like shy kitten, and then there's like kitten that's going to like climb up your back and jump on your head. All these kittens are unique and different, and we have to start talking about them that way and not just as this quote population. It's too easy to kill them when we talk about them that way. And when we're talking to the public, it's too easy for them to say, cats should die, these cats are a nuisance. Tell them the stories of each individual cat. And if I've really picked up anything that I've been here, it's that you all really struggle with this community cat issue. And I understand it's a really complex issue. But regardless of whether those cats are still losing their lives, it's your responsibility to talk about each one as an individual and not as, quote, cats. It's just a different way of thinking about them. Okay, really quickly, some of the other ways that we engage. I write monthly reports, tell people everything we're doing. Public-facing newsletters. We have volunteers do photo shoots of our pets anytime we can get them to. Kennel walkthrough videos. The very, very, very best thing that I ever do with my time is take my iPhone, set it on Facebook Live, and walk through the kennel and show each animal. It's so easy to do. It takes no time at all. You just walk through and just show people the animals and tell them a little bit about them, and people love that. They love it. They love to get to go kind of into the shelter with you when they can't be there themselves. Make your shelter a community center. Your shelter, in the future, animal shelters are going to be just like parks and recreation centers and community centers. They're not going to be pounds anymore. They're going to be places people come to meet their new family member. Animal shelters of the future are going to be embraced by everyone in our community. Pets are really important to people, and if we open the doors and we throw open the doors and we invite people to help, they're going to help us, and we're going to turn our communities into shelters. just like we have with kids. Our community is the shelter. The shelter itself is just a temporary landing place for a pet to stop for a day or so, maybe a little bit longer on its way to its next step. Showed this cat a couple of times because she was such a knock in the head for me. If you were in the Dayline, you heard the story, but really, really briefly, she was in our shelter for 8 months. She was not very nice. She was one of those cats. She's gorgeous, but she would aggressively do this move, this attack grab from her kennel. The staff thought she was unadoptable. She was sitting. We put her up on social media. Because she was so beautiful, she found foster, that very sweet lady right there, found foster in a day with a person who's a bona fide cat whisperer. Went home and this is a few hours after she went home. She was like, I'm good. I'm fine. I just wanted to get out of there. And it was really sad because I think the lesson for me is if we had just asked sooner, that cat would not have had to endure the emotional pain of being locked in a kennel in a place she was really scared for 8 months. And so if there is a thing to remember from this presentation, it's don't be afraid, be brave, and remember that we're their only voice. They cannot speak. It is up to us to speak for them. And social media and these easy marketing strategies, they don't cost any money. I do them myself, and I'm really busy. You can all do them too. And they're easy, simple, free ways for us to save so many lives of animals who otherwise wouldn't have a chance. Thank you.